Hello, my name is Isabella, and I'm about to celebrate my 29th birthday. This year marks 4 years of marriage to my husband, Larry, who's 2 years older than I am. We have a 3-year-old son, Roger. I used to work full-time, but after Roger was born, I shifted to a part-time role at the same company to better juggle family life. When Larry and I were dating, he was always confident and assertive, but since we got married, I've noticed a more dominant side to him, especially when it comes to his younger sister, Rachel. Rachel is 22, 10 years younger than Larry, and their age gap has created a dynamic where Larry seems to indulge her every whim. I didn't mind her frequent visits when we were dating. If anything, I thought it was sweet how close they were, but after we married, I began to notice things that started to bother me. Rachel has this habit of showing up unannounced, expecting to be catered to, and rarely ever offering anything in return, and when she does visit, Larry expects me to serve her without question. I found myself making dinner for an extra guest without preparation, while Rachel strolls in with no acknowledgement of the inconvenience. What's worse, Larry doesn't seem to understand. Instead of supporting me, he criticizes me in front of her, telling me I should have thought ahead. Rachel sometimes apologizes, but it's clear she enjoys the preferential treatment. After meals, they'll leave the table a mess and retire to the couch, carrying on their conversation while Roger and I are left to clean up and be largely ignored. One evening, as Roger and I were about to take a bath, Larry suddenly interrupted, telling me I needed to go buy a gâteau for Rachel because she wanted it, immediately. Even though it was already late, I reluctantly agreed, taking Roger with me. As we walked, I overheard Larry and Rachel making harsh comments about me, questioning my thoughtfulness and even Larry's decision to marry me. Roger, not fully understanding, could sense the tension and became upset. To ease the discomfort, I asked Roger which gâteau he would prefer. His face lit up as he excitedly chose a fruit-filled one. The light-hearted conversation about gâteau helped distract us. We arrived just before the shop closed and found both Rachel's requested gâteau and the one Roger had chosen. When we returned, I served Rachel and Larry their gâteau before bringing Roger his special dessert, but before I could set it down, Rachel pointed to it and declared she wanted it instead. Without missing a beat, Larry took the gâteau from Roger and handed it to Rachel. Dismissing his protests, he defended his actions, claiming that since he had paid for the gâteau, he had the right to decide who got what. I couldn't hold back my frustration any longer and voiced my displeasure, raising my voice for the first time. Larry, in response, threatened me with divorce. Roger, who had been crying, tried to lighten the mood by saying, "Mom, I love gâteau with strawberries too. It's delicious," as he ate a piece of the gâteau that had originally been for Rachel. Seeing my son in distress, I quickly took his plate from him as Rachel reached for it again. I led Roger into another room to let him enjoy his gâteau in peace. Meanwhile, Larry apologized to Rachel, regretting his actions, but I held my tongue, focusing on keeping the peace for Roger's sake. As I watched Roger happily eating his gâteau in the next room, I felt a deep sense of relief. Afterward, we took a late bath and then settled into Roger's bed for the night. The next morning, I discovered Rachel had left early. While I was preparing breakfast, I heard Roger crying. His piggy bank, one my father had given him, had been broken, and the money he'd saved was gone. Roger was heartbroken, his little voice shaking as he cried. When I confronted Larry, he casually mentioned that Rachel had taken the money because she needed it. My heart broke for Roger, seeing him so devastated. I cried with him, but what hurt even more was Larry's complete disregard for our son's feelings. Filled with a mix of anger and sadness, I confronted Larry more directly than I ever had before, breaking my usual rule of avoiding conflict in front of Roger. Larry, without a word, went to the bedroom and returned holding divorce papers. He threw them at me in a sudden fit of rage and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. As I stood there, holding my crying son, the weight of everything hit me. I knew that our family dynamic was broken, and the road ahead would be a difficult one. Roger, who had always kept his emotions in check when it came to the tensions between Larry and Rachel, finally reached his breaking point. He had been crying since the night before, and the sight of him so distressed became unbearable. Unable to watch him suffer any longer, I suggested we skip daycare for the day. His response was immediate and full of relief, a loud, enthusiastic yes, followed by a small, but genuine smile. It was clear he needed this day just as much as I did, so we decided to spend the day together, bonding and finding joy in the simplest moments. Roger, grinning from ear to ear, grabbed a picture book from the shelf and climbed into my lap. "Today, Mama is the teacher at the nursery, right?" he asked, his innocent question and sweet face filling me with warmth. I smiled at his innocence, touched by how much he wanted to share this day with me. I decided then that I would take the day off from work. Despite the potential consequences, it felt like the right choice, to put everything else aside and focus solely on Roger. When I called into my workplace, my colleagues were understanding and granted me a day off without hesitation. We spent the morning at the park, playing hide and seek, digging in the sandbox, and going down the slide together. By the time we returned home for lunch, Roger's eyelids were heavy with sleep. Normally, he would nap in his own bed, but today, he curled up in my arms, just like he used to when he was a baby. For a moment, I considered using the quiet time to catch up on household chores, but then I thought better of it. Today wasn't about tasks, it was about cherishing these precious moments with my son. Let myself befully present, soaking in his peaceful sleeping face and the gentle rise and fall of his breath. Just as I was starting to relax, the sound of the front door opening suddenly shattered the calm. It was an unusual time for Larry to be home, so my heart skipped a beat. I quickly scooped Roger up and retreated to the bedroom closet, my pulse racing. From behind the closed door, I heard Rachel's voice, sharp, impatient, as she rummaged through the house. Her muttered complaints about not finding what she was looking for sent a chill through me. Then I heard her on the phone, discussing Larry and their unsuccessful search for something. After she locked the door and left, I waited in silence, my mind spinning with confusion and fear. Once she was gone, I laid Roger back down and sat down to collect my thoughts. It struck me, Larry and Rachel might be scheming together, and the sense of betrayal and unease settled heavily in my chest. In a haze of emotions, I packed a bag for Roger and myself, making a quick decision to leave. We headed to the train station, catching a train to my parents' house, only 3 stops away. I hadn't told them we were coming, but the worry in my eyes spoke volumes. They welcomed us with open arms, no questions asked. In the safe haven of their home, I finally shared everything that had been happening, the strange behavior of Larry and Rachel and my growing fear of returning to our house. My mother, after listening carefully, speculated that Rachel might have been searching for something of mine, cash or cards perhaps, and this only deepened my anxiety. As I sat there with my parents, the weight of the situation started to sink in. It brought back memories of my life before marriage. When I had been the CEO of a successful handmade goods company, I had handed over the reins to trusted friends when I decided to focus on raising Roger, but I had continued to maintain my role behind the scenes, along with a level of financial independence that Larry didn't know about. The discovery of the divorce papers Larry had secretly prepared made me realize he might have believed I was hiding substantial savings. While I had mentioned that the company still provided me some financial support, I had never told him the full extent of my position as CEO or the amount of money I had kept aside. I had kept this part of my life hidden because, early on, I realized that Larry wasn't good with money. He would spend everything he earned. He had contributed very little to our household expenses and had even suggested that I quit my job and become a full-time housewife. But with the financial pressures of raising Roger and our tight budget, I couldn't agree to stop working. Eventually, Larry begrudgingly accepted that I would continue working part-time. Since Roger was born, I've been relying on my personal savings to cover his nursery fees and clothing, as the monthly food allowance Larry provided was far from enough. I never asked for more money from him, which only reinforced his misguided belief that I had plenty of savings. Considering Rachel's apparent need for money and Larry's misconceptions about my financial situation, it seemed likely that they were searching for my cash or cards, possibly to protect themselves in case of any financial fallout. I also have a separate savings account for Roger, into which a portion of my salary is deposited each month, but despite their best efforts, they wouldn't find anything, since I always keep my valuables with me. Still, the ongoing problem of Rachel's unannounced visits, and the possibility that Larry might be involved, was becoming increasingly concerning. Following my father's advice, I decided to secure my valuables, including my cash cards, in my parents' safe. As I mulled over their motivations for needing money, Roger came to my father, tears streaming down his face, distraught over his broken piggy bank. This moment drove home just how much this situation was affecting my son, not just financially, but emotionally as well. The news of Roger's lost savings and the broken piggy bank infuriated my father, who vowed to confront Larry immediately. My mother, however, suggested we take a more cautious approach, finding out their true motives first. She reminded me that any rash accusations could potentially backfire and play into Larry's hands if this led to a divorce, especially with the legal implications at stake. To get to the bottom of things, I decided to record their conversations. I consulted with a lawyer who was a family friend, and that evening, I returned home, ready to gather the evidence I needed. As I started preparing dinner, I strategically placed my phone on the kitchen counter, screen down, to discreetly record. Larry came home earlier than expected, his mood already tense. He immediately began interrogating me about my cash cards, asking where they were. His questions became more forceful, and when I stayed silent, he grew even more agitated. He demanded that I hand over the money I earned from my part-time job to support Rachel. I refused and calmly explained that the money was for Roger's savings. In a fit of rage, Larry shoved the signed divorce papers toward me, accusing me of living off his money and insisting that I had no right to save for Roger. He even went as far as to say that Rachel was more important to him than our son. That comment hit me like a ton of bricks. I stopped cooking, grabbed the divorce papers, and took Roger by the hand. As I walked toward the door, Larry's angry voice echoed behind us, declaring that his decision for a divorce was final and ordering me never to return. I turned to him and, with all the strength I could muster, told him I wouldn't go back to a home where strangers could come and go as they pleased. Once outside, I turned off my phone and ignored the flood of messages and calls from Larry. I needed space and time to think, so I went straight to my parents' house. There, I shared the recording and the divorce papers with them. I admitted that I had no love left for Larry, but my primary concern was Roger's well-being. My parents were supportive, standing by whatever decision I felt was best, though they also understood the emotional toll a divorce might have on Roger. As we discussed these heavy matters, Roger, blissfully unaware of the gravity of the situation, piped up, asking for food. My mother, seeing how upset I was, kindly stepped in to make him his favorite meal, burgers, to help ease the tension and comfort him in this difficult moment. Overcome with emotions and the warmth of my parents' support, tears welled up in my eyes as my mother placed Roger's burgers in front of him with a loving, reassuring smile, while she prepared the meal. Roger and I were reminded that we always had a place of comfort with family. As Roger took a big bite, his face lit up with joy. He beamed and told us how much he loved his grandma's cooking, wishing he could have her burgers every day. Smiling, I replied that the secret ingredient was the love we all shared for him. In a sweet, simple gesture, Roger took another large bite and then offered it to me. His act of sharing, so pure and heartfelt, moved me to tears, though I tried to hold them back. Seeing my tears, Roger became concerned, prompting my father to reassure him that they were tears of happiness, not sadness. With a hug, Roger comforted me, and I could see the same emotion reflected in my father's eyes, highlighting the profound value of moments like these. In the embrace of family, I took the opportunity to explain to Roger how precious family really is. Surprised, he asked if Dad thought Rachel was the only one who counted as family. My father, with kindness, assured him that wasn't the case, then asked if Roger would like to live with us as a family. Roger, with a joyful laugh, eagerly agreed, bringing smiles all around. As we shared this tender moment, I felt a clarity wash over me. It was time to move on from Larry. The decision to talk about divorce was daunting, but deep down, I knew it was the right choice. Roger seemed to sense the shift too, even jokingly referring to our older dog as his younger brother, showing how much he craved a sense of true family. The next day, we began the process of divorce, reaching out to a lawyer who was a close friend of my father. As we set the legal wheels in motion, my father and Roger shared light-hearted moments, bringing laughter and easing some of the heaviness of the situation. I spent a quiet moment in bed, reflecting on my childhood and the strength I had gained from my family, realizing how far I had come. The next morning, I checked my phone and saw over 180 missed calls and messages from Larry. His emotional turmoil was evident, but the constant barrage left me exhausted and seeking clarity, so I turned off my phone. With the lawyer's help, we laid out everything for my parents. It became clear that Rachel had accumulated significant debt due to a gambling and shopping addiction, which added yet another layer of complexity to the strained family dynamics. Larry had secretly taken on the role of guarantor for Rachel's debts and had hoped to use my savings to cover them. The lawyer informed us that the divorce papers had already been filed, and when Larry learned that the divorce had been finalized, he broke down, overwhelmed by the reality of it all. Despite anticipating disagreements over child support, Larry agreed to pay $145 each month for Roger's care. In a later conversation, Larry's tone softened. He admitted to his financial manipulations and revealed his internal struggle over his responsibilities to Rachel. I stood firm in my decision to move forward, unwavering. As Larry's faint sobs filled the silence before he wished me happiness and ended the call, I remained resolute in my choice. I discussed my future plans with my parents, deciding it would be best for Roger and me to stay with them until he was older. I also resumed my full-time role as president of the company, determined to build a stable and secure future for myself and Roger. Later, I learned that Larry and Rachel had explained the situation to their parents, leading to their disownment. Today, I find peace and joy surrounded by my loving family, grateful for the fresh start that I've embraced, far removed from the chaos of my past with Larry.